So I am going to ask if you feel comfortable, just even slide up a table, so because it'll look better. If you don't want to, I don't care. I'm not going to be bossy, but it's really hard to speak to nothing. Not that you're not nothing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm being bossy. My brother's here. He knows that's my normal. So I'm going to thank you all for coming. If you're hungry, please have some pizza. The exits are there. There's 4 of them. So please note those. The bathrooms are to the back. I haven't emceed for a while, so I'm a little out of practice. I couldn't do it for a little while because I got the very first meeting we ever had, before we even had petition sheets, before we even had badges, Elections Alberta, apparently I'm under investigation for them. So then I couldn't do any emceeing anymore. Am I in the wrong place, Max? Okay. So thank you for coming. This is a Let's Talk Alberta event. I am going to say that the event is, all the events are sponsored with donations. So there are donation pails there, and they will probably go around. But if you like what we're doing, there are ways to donate online as well. We're going to open in prayer. If I can have Brad. There you go. No, but I caught his attention, so maybe he'll be quiet. Lord, we ask that you can enter this building tonight. And we ask that you enter with our speech and our thoughts. We thank you for this great country, for the flatlands, for the mountains, for the rivers. We ask that you be with all those who are still putting seed in the ground. They are literally our bread and butter. And we thank you, Lord, for being with us tonight, and we ask that you just be with the speakers and guide them and have their message be clear. In Jesus' name, amen. So our first speaker tonight is Shane Meikle, and he's going to kind of maybe give you some insights that you had never heard of about Alberta history. That's kind of his bag. He could write a book, but we don't let him do that. Read the book. I'm done. That's your mic. Apparently I touched it and it was the wrong thing.
He had it set to the right.
I know. So there we go. I'm going to put this back down. It's Max.
Max. Good evening. So what I am, as Patty alluded to, I'm kind of a history buff. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the historical relationship between what is now Alberta and the federal government. So in the 1880s to about 1903, 1904, there was a huge settler movement, mainly made up of Americans. And they started forming communities all throughout what was then the Northwest Territories in both what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan. And they formed towns, and they were very interested in the Northwest Territories becoming part of the United States. And they formed towns. How many here know of the little spot on the map called USONA? There's a few. I live about 6 miles from USONA. Do you know what USONA stands for? The United States of North America. The town of Rimbey. How many know where Rimbey is? A lot more know that one. Its original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie was Yankee Valley. There's a little town not very far, well, it's not a town, it's a community hall. It was a United Church at one time, and now it's a hall and museum in the little region called Dakota. And all throughout Alberta and Saskatchewan, there's towns that still have American-sounding names or originally had American-sounding names. And this made the federal government very nervous because it's a lot easier to absorb a territory than it is to absorb a province. And that was one of the main reasons why they decided that they needed to carve out 2 more provinces in the Northwest Territories. In 1903, on the steps of the Manitoba legislature, Sir Clifford Sifton made the following statement: "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our people, to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." Now, why would we care what some gentleman said way back in 1903? Well, he was one of the authors of the Alberta and Saskatchewan Acts. So in 1905, on September 1st, the Alberta Act was brought into legislation, as well as the Saskatchewan Act. How many here have had a chance to ever read the Alberta Act? I would encourage you to go to the Government of Alberta website and download a copy of it. It's not very long, but it will change your perspective on our relationship with Ottawa. In there, we are given the name of a province, but we are given the rights and responsibilities of a territory. So right from the get-go, we were never treated as an equal partner within Confederation. In 1913, the Railroad Act amendments were brought into being by Ottawa. And now what did that do? That made it so that regional railways could not cross provincial lines. So if you were shipping to Thunder Bay, let's say, you would load at, let's say, Stettler. They would have to change over at the Saskatchewan border, and again at the Manitoba border, and again at the Ontario border. They could not haul it all the way through. The interesting thing is that Eastern railways were made exempt. So it only referred to Western Canadian railways. And in 1943, by 1943, most of the regional railways had been put out of business because they just couldn't afford to operate. And then a new railway was formed, and you now know that as Canadian National Railways. And they absorbed all of the assets of all of those defunct regional railways. In 1930, the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement was agreed upon between all the provinces, which transferred all of the control over natural resources to the provincial control. But Ottawa made it very clear at the time that they did not consider Alberta and Saskatchewan to be worthy of the the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement. So they said that they would still have some control over Alberta and Saskatchewan's resources. But on December 11th of 1931, the King decreed that and brought into effect the Statute of Westminster. Now, the Statute of Westminster has a lot of misunderstandings around it, but one thing that it did do is it gave the sovereignty over land and resources to the people in care of the provinces. So all federal land that is in the province of Alberta is actually Alberta's land, not the federal government's. And if we were to enforce that agreement from 1931, we would never have had Jasper happen, because we could have been there and we could have rolled in and helped the town. In 1935, the then voluntary Canada Wheat Board was formed, and it was voluntary for all of Canadians until 1946, when it was made mandatory for Western Canadians. And it stayed in effect until 2012. And what that did is, okay, if I was a member or a citizen of Ontario, and I wanted to sell my grain to the United States, how did I do that? I would roll my truck up to the bin, load my grain, and go across the line and sell to the United States. If I was west of the Manitoba border, if I wanted to sell to the United States, I would have to roll up to my bin, load my truck, take it to the local elevator, offload it, go around to the far side of the elevator, load back up, paying a fee to the wheat board, and then I could sell it to the United States. Now, the reason that this was gotten rid of is because Western Canadian farmers had had enough of it. And we had 13 farmers in Alberta and Saskatchewan that finally decided that it was worth going to jail for, and they ran the border. And they spent between 6 months and a year in jail because of it. And finally, the wheat board was dissolved in 2012. From 1947 to 1950, we had just discovered vast reserves of oil. And in 1947, the federal government decided to control our oil pricing and all pipelines. So we could not set our own prices here. Max, can you turn this mic down just a smidge? What that meant is they set every price that we set, and they set it so that we could not sell very well, and we couldn't put pipelines in without their permission. And that lasted until 1950, and at that time then we got back control of our oil pricing and pipelines. And then in 1965, how many here are old enough? We got a fairly young crowd tonight. How many here, though, are old enough to remember the great flag debate of 1965? There's a couple. So what happened? So our then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that we needed to have a flag that we could call our own. And he said that he wanted a flag that was representative of Canada. And so the design of the flag, the two bars on the side are supposed to represent the two oceans, and the symbol in the middle is supposed to be the people. Well, he chose the sugar maple, which is only found east of the Manitoba border. It's not found in Western Canada. And Diefenbaker got up and in the House of Commons and argued that it should be the Manitoba maple, which is found from coast to coast. Pearson did not like this, so he did closure on the bill and forced it to vote, and not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the maple leaf. Instead, they figured that we should stay with the red ensign, which is still one of our official flags. We actually have two official flags. But the controversy was so great that in 1967, 2 years later, during Canada's centennial, many cities and towns in Western Canada would not fly the maple leaf. They would only fly the red ensign. But by the time I started school in the very early 1970s, it had already been memory hold. Never heard anything about it until I was doing research years later. 1973 to 1974, we have the oil export taxation policies, and Alberta's oil profits were capped. Now, how many of you heard that in the 70s we had oil shortages? Yes. Now, imagine that you are an oil company, and you're producing oil, but if you overproduce from what Ottawa tells you, you have to send all your profits to them. Would you produce that oil? I wouldn't. And that is what caused our oil shortages. And that lasted for a year, actually 18 months, that bill was in effect. And our then Premier, Peter Lougheed, fought tooth and nail to get that repealed. And he finally did. But 6 years later, Pierre Elliott Trudeau brought another one on us, and that was the National Energy Program. So in 1980, they brought that in. Now, that was everything that they had in the 73 to 74, but they added one thing to it, and that was that we also had to make selling to the East a priority at their set price, not ours. And that stayed in effect until 1988. And then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney repealed it. But he didn't do it because he loved the Western Canada. He did it specifically because oil prices dipped so low that it cost more to enforce the National Energy Program than they were getting out of it. So it just wasn't economically feasible for them to continue with it. But at the time that he brought it in, several ministers within Trudeau's government at the time made statements such as, we must bring this in order that Alberta does not become the economic engine of Canada. And they specifically said that was the reason they were bringing in the National Energy Program, was to make sure that we did not become the economic engine. Well, we have become the economic engine, despite all of everything that they've done. During the 1980s and 1990s, we had several things that happened. And we had the Constitution we brought home in '82. We had the '85 referendum in Quebec. Then we had the '95 Quebec referendum. Now we can thank the second referendum because at the time the Canadian government went to the Supreme Court and asked them, can a province secede from Canada? And the Supreme Court said yes, but they must do these following steps in order to do so. And that is what the Clarity Act was built upon. So there is a method and a mechanism for it to happen without being called traitors. It was set up, and we have the right to do so now under the Constitution. Now we'll jump forward to the 2000s. And in 2012, Bill C-38, the Jobs, Growth, and Prosperity Act, came in, which gave Ottawa control over all of Alberta's projects. That means that you couldn't do anything from build a pipeline to a highway to a high-rise in downtown Calgary without federal approval. In 2016, the federal carbon pricing came in. Everybody knows what that did to everybody. In 2019, Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban off the West Coast, were brought into effect. Now, these four bills were supposed to be repealed under the MOU signed between Mark Carney and Danielle Smith last fall. But within 7 days of them signing the MOU, Parliament voted down that MOU, so that these are still all four in effect to this day. We have been ignoring the Bill C-38, but the federal government keeps trying. That's how they're stopping some of our pipelines in the north that they say are affecting caribou travel and things like that, is because of Bill C-38. Then we come to modern times, and there's two bills currently in the Parliament that are designed to basically control our lives, and that's Bill C-8 and Bill C-9. Bill C-8 is the Internet Censorship Bill, and what that does is they use the hate on the internet as a reason. However, all it takes is the minister's signature to totally wipe you off the internet. You do not have, if that passes through, you will have no repeal, you will have, or no appeal, you will have no method in order to, if they would decide that you're off the internet, that doesn't mean that they just get rid of your ISP. That means that everything that you do online, you will not be able to do, from banking to messaging on social media to anything. Your presence will be removed from the internet. And even worse than Bill C-8 is Bill C-9, the anti-hate speech bill. Under that one, which is even farther along because it's at first reading in the Senate, it passed the House already, and it is in first reading in the Senate. And what that one does is that one if this meetings like this, if they decide that it's hate speech, because there's no definition of hate speech, it's if somebody complains, they treat it as hate speech. And they can come in and arrest me, arrest any other speaker, and they, if found guilty, I can have all my assets seized and go to jail just for speaking. They also have, it's specifically spelled out in there that if you believe in the Bible and you quote the Bible to somebody, you can go to jail and have all your assets taken. So those two, if you got rid of the rest of our history, just those two bills alone are in my opinion, reasons that we have to seriously look at becoming independent. So I would thank you very much. And now our next speakers are MayCee and Madison Holmes. Sorry. And it's good to see some younger people up here speaking. And I will invite them up at this time to come on up.
Max told me to use the green mic. Okay, hi. I'm MayCee Holmes and Madison, and we're sisters. And thank you for inviting us to speak, and thank you all for coming here. I guess I'll do a little introduction since I'm assuming most of you might not know who we are. So we're nothing special, just an average family of 7, and we got into basically learning how the government is trying to kill us during COVID, and that was, I guess, our wake-up story, along with a lot of other people. And then that inspired us to kind of invest into our family, because our dad's really smart, and he kept on reading books and listening to podcasts, and we thought that was very inspirational because he wanted to update real time, because we were like the average pleb where we didn't just watch our hockey games, didn't pay attention to the world, didn't pay attention to movements like this. And so then we started our podcast at Home with Holmes, because we wanted to talk about what it is that we were learning as we scrub toilets for a living. Literally, we're house cleaners. So we talk about basically everything that we value, from geopolitics to culture to movements like this. And we're trying to take what we can macro that we're learning and bring it here on the micro for us to practically understand what it is that we can do. So.
Yeah, I appreciate, Shane, what you were talking about, because with the podcast and being young, we don't have a lot of experience, and we're not lost on that subject. We meet a lot of young people, and they think, oh, because we've listened to some podcasts, we've read some books, we know things. And they tell us not to trust people of the older generation, but being in a family of 7, all we know is how to talk to people. It doesn't matter the age. And our dad always gave us the respect that even though we're young and we're inexperienced, he said, I'm going to treat you as if I want to be treated. I'm going to listen to your argument, but beware, I have the right to defend mine own. And so when we were invited here to speak, I was thinking, maybe we could talk about what Shane did, some history that we've learned, some real world things, what it looks like with the bills that are coming down the line, not being able to afford a home as a young person. But then I asked Chris, and I thought, you're inviting me and MayCee here to speak, nobodies, we're young, but there's lots of young people. Why do you want us to speak? And he said, well, I want you to talk about the importance of talking to one another. And I didn't know what to do with that initially, but it makes perfect sense because we grew up in a family of 7. We recently participated in the AGM for the UCP, though we're not party line toters, but we like being involved. And the thing that we learned about doing the debate is that it's nothing new for us. Being in a family of 7, you could assume we're an echo chamber, but it is a wrestle match on a regular basis. We are fighting all the time on different negotiations, different ideas. And that's the one thing that I think me and MayCee want to emphasize today, is that being involved in the independence movement, especially recently, there's a lot of infighting that's going on. Who's going to be the leader? Should we kick out Danielle? Should we not kick out Danielle? Everybody has different ideas about what they want Alberta to look like. And the thing that we can't get lost on, being in a family of 7, just because somebody doesn't agree with how you should go about something, that doesn't mean you're not on the same page. And so with this whole movement, I don't care how many groups pop up. I prefer not one leader, because then they can take that one out and then we get all divided. But when you have a family of 7 or a family of 30 different Alberta groups, the thing is we all bring something different and everybody's pulling on the rope in their own way. And because you have that diversity, you also have a wider net. So now you can include people that maybe don't resonate with a Jeff Rath, but they resonate with Alberta Proud. Maybe they don't resonate with MayCee and Madison Holmes, but maybe they really resonate with Shane because he's got the history knowledge. And so when it comes to talking to one another, I really understand that, and being in a family of 7 that's still together throughout COVID, throughout the trucker convoy, throughout all of those things, it's because we talk to one another, even on the worst days. And some of those conversations, yes, they are arguing matches. Sometimes people storm out of the room, but then they come back when they're ready. And then we still have the conversation. So that's one of my biggest takeaways, just looking at the Alberta movement. Being in a family that can stick together, I think the Alberta movement, regardless of the leader, how many groups, we got to stick together, because the people, this is what the movement is. It's the grassroots.
I was going to say I agree with that, and we need to talk to each other, because when we were having a lovely conversation with Vicky and Al in the car, because they were gracious enough to drive us, to thank you, and that's like the hidden power behind the whole movement right there, is when people step up like that, and we really appreciate that. And we were having a lovely conversation. I can't not talk about the context of what we were talking about in the car on our way up here. So we were just chit-chatting about the idea of one singular leader, whether or not we have that. And I remember when the first controversies were coming up about the different faces, whether they are the Jeff Raths or not, I was like, the whole point is we are the movement, and the people need to take the responsibility in their own hands regardless. So it's people like Chris that decide to put on a town hall just for the sake of it. He's not doing it because Keith Wilson told him to. He's not doing it because Corey told him to, or Jeff. He's doing it because his own conviction told him to. So when you decide to do stuff like that, that's how you build the movement, and any one of you can put on a town hall. It's funny, we were actually, me and Maddie are a part of our CA board for the UCP Fish Creek, and again, not because we wanted to toe the party line, but it was because we saw what Lougheed was doing, Calgary Lougheed, when they did the Injection of Truth event to talk about the vaccines, and we were like, in my wildest dreams would have never thought that topic could have been talked about under a UCP banner. I was like, what? So I thought that's so cool, and the fact that they put that in their own hands to do that, and you don't even need to be a part of a CA to find people to put together a town hall, clearly, to talk about subjects that you feel are important to you. And when it comes to something as well that we were just chit-chatting about on our way up here, it was the idea of play out your worst case scenario, because I think that that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, is that when I'm enmeshed in the UCP politics, what I hear a lot is people saying that we cannot let the NDP in and we cannot let them win. And my brain just kind of goes like, okay, but play out the worst case scenario. Okay, they get in, then what? To me, I'm like, this networking that we're doing, the friends that we're making, have your guns loaded and know where it is that you stand with your people, because when stuff does go down, you do have to prepare for the worst, right? And of course, we're going to try and like trudge our way along so that way it doesn't happen, but letting your fears control you to the point where you feel like you'll have nothing to do if it happens, that's not a good sign. That's not preparing for something that's that might come, right? So you have to prepare for that, get your friends. That's the whole point of why we've been networking, and Chris has been doing a fantastic job doing these town halls to keep furthering building the movement, because as he said, we're trying to build a culture, right? And so that's purely and fully our responsibility in our community and our network, and so it's good to have your guns ready and your friends close by. And then the other thing I was going to say, last little, I guess, adage, and I'll give it back to you, was that even for the ideas of like the independence movement, okay? So some people are cashing all their chips onto this, and I understand that's why we're here, and we appreciate it, and we want to do it, and we're going to keep working towards it. But even some of the historical knowledge that was shared previously to us is that the Privy Council and Governor Generals and Lieutenant Governor Generals, and if you guys haven't heard of someone's work that we very much admire, is an individual named Matthew Arrett from Canadian Patriot Press. He didn't tell me to plug him. This is my own conviction as a young person listening and trying to get my head around the situation that we're in. And he shares some of the historical knowledge of what it is that this sort of Canadian deep state is and where it came from and what they are capable of. And the hidden levers that they have within it to just basically snap their fingers and Thanos, whatever premier that we have in Alberta, the Governor General can do that. And the new one that just got in is terrifying, and we need to be wary of stuff like that as well, because the Privy Council already made an announcement that this Alberta thing, they're like, it's not happening. Like, no matter, you put in your vote, that's nice and all, or it's never going to happen, right? But that's one of those things where even during the speech of Patrick Henry in, what year was it? 1776, sorry. He said that in his speech, they had to go through all of the political measures to show how broken the system was. So even this vote can expose how broken our system is, and they had to physically fight for their independence. That's what Americans were British subjects. We still are. We're the exact same as they are now, just we're trying to fight it now. And we're going through our political process, and I still encourage it, and I still want to get with it. But at the end of the day, if, again, you play out your worst case scenario, do you have your guns ready? Do you have your friends close? Are you prepared for that? Because they had to physically fight a thing. Okay, Canadians, that's not really in our history that too much. So that's something that just wrap your head around. I planted an idea, there you go. And then I think that's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Yeah, we clean houses and we garden. And while we do this, we listen to podcasts. We were gardening recently, and our client came out, and he watches our podcast, and he heard about the new bills that Sean pointed out, and he said, you guys own a podcast, and you're in Canada, and these bills are coming out. He's like, you're screwed. We're like, okay, thank you. But it does point out the reality. He's paying attention, he's watching us, and he's got our back. So even with this whole thing, there is nothing that's futile about it. And our podcast, half of the reason we do it is just so we can get regular plebs on that we know are listening and paying attention, but they're not getting their voice in. Even the youth, me and MayCee have had one hell of a time trying to get youth that even agree with all of this, but they don't want to come out and say it. That's a very difficult thing. And even people that were like, hey, if you don't agree, come on and we'll share that too. They still don't want to do it. And so that bill and not talking, which is kind of the whole point of why Chris invited us, not talking is when people start to really get hurt, because conversations is how we connect with one another in today's modern day world anyway. So keep talking. We appreciate the invitation and hearing out two random chicks you'd never met before. And thank you for coming out, because you guys are the reason that this whole thing is up and moving. So thank you very much. And then Chris, get your beautiful butt up here. Just your butt.
Yeah, not the rest of you. Just your butt, yeah.
And come close us off. Max, do you want him using green?
Yep, green.
Thanks. I was waiting for one more person. Well, that was quite the compliment. I don't usually get compliments like that very often. I gotta go. Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming out. I didn't realize that there was a sporting event and there was a 4-H meeting tonight. Otherwise, maybe we would have rescheduled, but it turns out that we have a good crowd here anyway. But I do want to point something out. These meetings are not necessarily about getting 1,000 people in a room. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to get to every corner of Alberta. We want to share our opinions regarding Alberta sovereignty with as many people as we can, and then we want to talk to you folks and hear what you have to say about it. We want to hear your concerns. We want to hear your objections. We want to hear, if you disagree with us on something. This is really important to have these conversations. And of course, we always we live stream these as well. So there's people that are watching at home, and we're going to take questions from them as well. So this whole concept about talking to each other, the farther we get on this journey we're on, and it is a journey, the farther we get, the more apparent it becomes that we really have to start talking about things. In my day-to-day conversations, the people that are on the fence about Alberta sovereignty, they generally have the same concerns. It's concerns about specific policies that that result in something like a pension or our currency or something now, and how that's going to look later. And myself included, up until about 4 years ago, we really don't have a very good idea about how a lot of this stuff works, right? We haven't had to pay attention to it for the most part. I mean, yeah, we go out and vote and we kind of see stuff on the news, but at the end of the day, if people asked us about the intricacies of Confederation, Alberta's relationship to Canada, how our trade works, how our laws work, how the justice system works, how civics works, we're kind of lost. We didn't really understand, we didn't really have the answers. And I think that's because we just didn't talk about these things. For most of my lifetime, it's been considered improper or impolite to talk about religion and politics. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Politics affects every part of your life from before you're born until after you die. That's a fact. And religion affects the entire rest of your eternity. And we somehow got this idea that it's impolite or improper to talk about these things. So we stopped talking about politics around the dinner table or with our friends when we're out for dinner. And we end up in a situation where we're facing a very important choice in October, albeit it's not quite as critical as it was before, but it is still critical. And we go into these choices not having the conversations and not really understanding what the outcome will be if we answer one way or the other. And that is a critical gap in democracy. We live in a place where, allegedly, if we bring enough people with us for a cause, we can influence legislation, influence government, and act for that cause. Now, as a Western Canadian, I don't really feel that very much at all, actually, because it's almost impossible for even the entirety of Western Canada to change the course of the nation. But we still have some choices, and so we have to start talking about these things. Even the highest levels of Canadian government right now are starting to talk about these things. And they're talking about it with the media because, I have yet to see any federal MP, politician, whatever, come to Alberta and ask Albertans what their specific concerns are and why they want sovereignty. I haven't seen any of that. But they're talking to the media. Just today, I saw a clip of Prime Minister Carney. He was, extending some veiled threats to Alberta, like, Alberta, don't try and use this as leverage because you might end up independent and it's going to be so bad for you. And I'm like, man, this guy's actually making the case for Alberta independence for me. If only I had an opportunity to go talk to some people about this and explain these things. So what Mark Carney is saying is, like with the Brexit campaign, everyone understand what happened with Brexit, right? The UK withdrawing from the European Union. Partially, not totally, that was the problem. There was this, a part of the campaign was, hey, we're going to use this as leverage to get a better deal. And lo and behold, they had a majority and they withdrew. So Mark Carney is saying, Alberta, don't stand up for yourselves. Don't try and use any leverage. Don't try and gain any negotiating power, because you might end up in a situation where you get what you're asking for. And someone like me, of course, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's absolutely freaking wonderful. You know, that's what we're looking for. We want sovereignty. We want to chart our own course. But instead of talking about the opportunity of a society, of a province, of a people to pursue self-determination after, you know, working for 121 years within Confederation as kind of, you know, and I don't want to, I say infantile before, but that's not really the right word. It's like a, you know, just not ready. Now we're here, we're ready, we're grown up, we're an economic superpower. We are a tenacious, hardworking people. We can do these things, we should do these things. And we have this huge opportunity in front of us. But nobody's talking about that. They're all talking about, well, what happens to my pension? Of course, my answer to that is, well, what happens to your pension now? If you don't like the way your pension's going, if you don't like that now we have a second pension payment, by the way, if you don't like the return you get, which if you average it over your lifetime, it's something like 2% effective or something like that. It barely covers inflation. If you don't like it, what are you going to do about it? As a Western Canadian, are we going to elect every MP in Alberta? Every MP, we're going to elect Conservatives. They're going to go to Parliament. They're going to advocate for change. We're going to get change, and it's going to, you know, adjust our pension or fix the inequities that the West has with the East in Canada. No, it's not going to happen, and it can't happen. So, from a Westerner's perspective, the conversation within Confederation is over before it even starts. It's like, okay, well, you guys don't have enough votes. You can't change anything. You're stuck with it. Just deal with it. Well, no. That's not how it's supposed to work in a democracy. It's not. Self-determination is important when you have common shared values. You have, you know, a culture that you want to preserve. And this could apply to Canada, although apparently Canada doesn't have its own culture. But these things are important, and if we can't pursue the future that we want for ourselves, and instead it's a group of people 4,000 kilometers away making the decisions for us, and then imposing those decisions on us, we suffer the consequences and they never do. How is that fair, and how is that a conversation that shouldn't be had? So we have a very important question coming up. And now the question is going to be, do you agree that we should pursue a path that will allow us to ask you if you agree that we should become an independent nation? It's convoluted. It's frustrating for sure. I completely flipped my lid when I originally heard the question. Now I've calmed down. I've thought about it a little more, and I really do believe that we probably were given quite the blessing with that, because now we have an opportunity that we didn't have before. Nevertheless, the question's coming. And in October, every one of us, because it's going to be the highest voter turnout in Alberta's history, right? Correct? Yes, something this important, absolutely. As we're standing there contemplating what this question means and what it could possibly mean for the future, what the opportunity is within that question, we need to have the the knowledge of the conversations we've had with fellow Albertans that let us make the best decision going forward. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. And that's why, once I'm done here, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Everybody's going to eat more pizza because we brought enough pizza for, I don't know, 150 people, and we don't have 150 people, so you need to eat more. We're going to have a little break, grab yourself a drink, and then we'll come back, and we really want to hear what you folks have to say. We want to hear, specifically, I want to hear what your objections are. What is it that you object to about Alberta being able to self-determine for the first time in history? What is your objection to Albertans charting their own course forward? What is it that concerns you about the unknown portion of an Alberta outside of Confederation? The things that are important to you, and then we're going to talk to you about those things. and hopefully we'll come to a place where everybody at least understands the topics we're talking about. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much. We'll come back in 10 minutes, and we'll get to the Q&A. Was that a charade for an announcement at the back, or are you just cheering that I'm leaving? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
So we're going to intermission mode, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to also, if you can, chip in and send an e-transfer to go@freedomcanada.net, get things up and running. I guess that is very helpful, help pays the bills, the internet, the Starlink outside, that is basically very helping me a lot today, which is very interesting. So if you can send some super chats, that'd be very awesome. Helps things going, and some e-transfers to go@freedomcanada.net. That would be very appreciated. So I'm going to intermission mode, and we'll see you in a bit with the Q&A section.
But while we're waiting on everybody else to get up here, I've got a couple favors to ask of you. First favor, there's a couple of people that I've asked to pass the bucket around. If you're able to put anything in that would be greatly appreciated. This is completely funded by people like you, and every little penny is appreciated. If you're not able to, that's understandable too. Second favor, the algorithm on social media is playing havoc with us. So we get people that are telling us that they don't get the posters for an event until like 4 or 5 days after the event has actually occurred. So if I could get you to go to letstalkalberta.com, freedomcalendar.net, the Whistle Stop Facebook page, or Let's Talk Alberta's Facebook page, go through the posters, grab the upcoming events, and send them to people that you know in those areas, and ask them to share them with people that they know. It's what I call the shampoo method. I don't know how many remembered the Clairol commercials from the 70s and 80s. You tell 2 friends, and we'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. That it works really, really good, and that's the way to get the messaging out. I think I'm going to have to do a song and dance here because the speakers aren't coming up to the front now. So you don't want me to have to do a song and dance. I'll get rid of everybody that's online for sure if I do that. How many people here is the first time for them to an independence type event? About a third. That's pretty good. Thank you very much for coming. Brad, you need to start passing that around. Yeah.
But I have a question that I can answer right away.
Oh, Chris has got a question that he's going to answer right away.
So on the live stream, somebody asked a question similar to, with this independence movement, who is going to be the leader? Who's going to resolve disputes? Who's going to make rules and policies and that type of thing? When we really got to work on this in 2021, one of the underlying truths was, if politicians get involved in stuff, it usually fails. And it was kind of understood that this movement towards Alberta self-determination, this movement towards a sovereign Alberta, had to be done as a grassroots thing by the people together. That's it. And if it wasn't done like that, it wasn't going to succeed. Because politicians, they do politician things, and they take paths and whatever to get what they want. But what we're looking for here, what we're working towards, it's not what we each individually want. I believe it's more like what we know that we need. right? We need to have a voice. We need to be able to influence the laws that govern us and that type of thing. So and I think we spend way too much time worrying about who is going to be the leader. Why does there have to be a leader for this? Why can't, if you're asking the question, who's going to be the leader, why would you ask that instead of stepping up and being a leader in some capacity wherever you're at? That's how we win this, right? Each person that believes in this needs to become leaders on their own and gather more people with them and just create this movement, create the parade. And then those politicians, you know what they'll do? They'll get in front of it because they know that it's so big that the only way they can get what they want, which is position, power, and money, is to get in front of it. So, yeah, I'll say that one more time. Instead of asking who is the leader, I think we need to instead ask, how can I be a leader in my capacity and bring more people to the movement? And that was for Andy, just in case you didn't know, Andy, that was your question.
If you have a question, just put your hand up, and Mr. Albertan will come to your table.
I'll hold the mic because he gets a little sketchy if I drop it.
Just to the young ladies there, Madison, how are you combating that where your generation doesn't want to talk? I'm getting the same even my generation. They're Federalists. They've loved Canada way back when. They're sitting on that fence. Like, how do you guys had success? How do you do in this to get them to talk or even acknowledge that something better could happen?
Do you want to go for it? Or you can start. You talked about it in the car.
Okay, so I was in the car when we were on our way here. We were talking about communication, and something that I think really resonated in what we've been finding, even when you're having any difficult conversations, is that, and this is just from constant negotiation from even people in your own household that have different perspectives than you, is that me and Maddie very much are long term is the game, the best play. So build rapport, because sometimes the best thing that you can do is just treat them like a human being. So if they feel like they can have a whole hour or 2 hour conversation where you just say nothing and are listening to them and affording them the courtesy of feeling like they are listened to, then that's something that, yeah, they might be saying things that you don't agree with, but at the same time, they're trusting you. They're like, oh my gosh, this is someone that actually treats me like a person, right? And then maybe later down the line, best case scenario, they might be like, what do you have to say about that, right? And then you're like, well, since you opened the door, I can walk in now, and this is what I have to say about it. But I think another thing is, when we're in conversations, what I found is, you don't necessarily have to go in going like, I need to talk to you about this. Like, I need to have this conversation with you, because I think when you stand where you want to stand, as in, here's how you can better understand me, and that does not necessarily mean I need you to understand me right now. As in, we might have 10 more conversations down the line. Oh, you didn't like the way I phrased that? How can I do it better? What analogy do you think would work best for you? Oh, okay, maybe they have a particular job, and you keep their context in your mind. You're like, oh, so maybe they work as a hairdresser, for example, and then you're starting to talk about the workforce, and you're starting to talk about dynamics of people, and like envisioning what their interactions of life is like, to better understand how to get through to them, and then you give your own experience. Now, on the specific topic of like Federalists and like they're in favor, and how do you get through on like the more specifics, again, the process of how I just kind of laid out, of just let time play out, treat them like a person, and then at the same time, speak from where it is that you can honestly, authentically just speak from your honest, authentic self about how you feel about it. And then again, marrying whether or not they understand right there and then that's not going to do you any favors. You just have to come across it from a perspective of how you genuinely feel about it and how you want to get across. But you can add your 2 bits.
Yeah, my 2 cents. We've had a couple on, and they're young, and it was funny because she actually went to the same school MayCee and I did. From grade 7 to 9, we went to the Calgary Girls Charter School, all girls, and it was very, very liberal. I remember taking tests on how many planets have you killed based off of your daily habits. Literally. So because of my bus ride to school every day, I killed 3 planets, everybody. That's some of the stuff that the school taught. So when we came across this couple and she was very, very liberal in her thinking, but she got with a very conservative guy that listened to podcasts, just asked a couple questions, and because of the mutual respect, she started coming around later. And we know countless examples that are like that. The reality is we are meeting people and maybe they agree, maybe they don't. It is always the in-person interaction. All the people that come on our podcast, they're outspoken, they're flamboyant, they're loud. Their ideology is their identity. And I think that's the biggest thing that learning this, like, yes, we're wearing these jerseys, but Alberta, we want to infiltrate hockey games. But the reality is, Alberta independence is not our identity. I'm Madison Holmes before I'm a separatist, a sovereigntist, whatever you want to label me as, a UCP rising star. These are all labels that get put upon me by other people, but I won't do it myself. So even the youth or the other person, I don't approach them as if they're an NDP person. We have friends that identify as communist. They're for Alberta independence. Labels don't work because people will put whatever label upon themselves thinking that it's their identity, but identity is something that gets negotiated through your whole life. When you're 18, that's one identity. You become a parent, that's another identity. Your kids leave the home, that's another identity. I've had to watch my parents reinvent themselves like 4 times each. So that's the one thing. We don't treat people as if they're walking ideologies. They're people who happen to have ideologies. That needs to come first. That way you can always treat them as a person. And then you deal with ideology later. Maybe they get angry and they cast it upon you. But if you're patient and they see you're treating them like a normal person, it comes around for me and MayCee every time thus far. So that's my 2, not 10 cents.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
So he was, Max, can you turn on my mic? So he was saying that the conversation's getting emotional, and that is true. What I've found in my experience, it's much easier to talk to people about the facts, the hard facts about Alberta, our position within Confederation, just about every opposition that somebody makes to a sovereign Alberta. I can flip that around and turn that into a reason why we must become sovereign and self-determined. But the emotional ones, that's trickier because it's not based on an objective fact that you can deal with on its face. It's based on potentially some sort of wall or bias that people have already put up in their mind to prevent them from even hearing what you're telling them, right? So that's a totally different thing, and it's not something I'm very good at. But I do know that it's important to maintain the relationship you have with people, and if the conversation's becoming really emotional and you know that you're not going to make you can't reach them with logic, it's probably a good idea just to leave it alone. Plant the seeds and let the greatest salesperson for Alberta independence that Alberta has ever seen, his name is Mark Carney, let Mark do the work for us. Because as we go further and further in this and more things come out of the Liberal government that are completely misaligned with what Alberta values are, those people that you've had that conversation with, you've planted some seeds, you've maintained the friendship because you back off when the emotional things start, well, they're thinking about those things. And they'll put 2 and 2 together on their own. But at the end of the day, if you lose the relationship, you have no more opportunity to be there when they have questions about these things, and you become an opponent. And the people that disagree with us are not opponents. The NDP are not our opponents. They're not our enemies. These are people who are our allies. We just haven't done the work to bring them to our side yet. So we got to remember that.
Just, I have a little quibble with that. Yeah, a quibble. Ready? Right? You're gonna set off my neuroticism, Chris. How many people here have like something goes on in their lives? It has literally nothing to do with the independence thing, but it comes out in something not related to the thing that made you emotional. So it's like, okay, me and my sister had an argument, and now suddenly I'm typing a bit more aggressively online. A youth comes at me or an adult, and I'm a little bit less receptive. It has nothing to do with them. It has to do with her. Well, could do with me, and I'm blaming her. But the thing with people being emotional, sometimes, a lot of the time, because we're human beings, sometimes it's not always to do with the independence thing. Sometimes it's something else. And that's come out, and I've had people where they got angry, they got emotional, they got passionate. I waited. I literally just waited. They had their whole rant, and then they apologized. And they went, sorry, I wasn't in a good headspace, or so-and-so back home is doing this thing. I mean, think of all the young people that can't afford a home right now. That's really stressful. They can't have families, but they value families. I can't even imagine what it's like for young men. I can't. Because the desire to have a family, they don't feel like they can get a woman with a solid brain because what society is doing to women, it's really tough right now. But that doesn't mean they're recognizing problems and they don't always know what the solution is. But there's so many problems. So even though I get it's heated, I mean, we're all very capable of taking somebody's heat. I mean, if you're married, if you have a sibling, you talk to people, you can take it. I mean, I know I can. I'm in a family of 7. I take it all the time. Just sometimes you got to allow people to have their tantrum moment, and you might find something come out on the other side.
I have something only because I was the recipient of the one getting really angry, and she stayed calm, and I was like, oh shit, I feel like a shitty person, because she was so calm and I was so angry, and I was coming at her, and she just stood her ground, and she was like, and then she wasn't being like satirical though, as in like, oh yeah, like keep bringing it at me, like I'll take it. No, it was more like I'm here with you. If this is how you want to act, okay, but I'm going to stay where I want to be, because sometimes it's like bring them down to your energy. You don't have to go to theirs. So you just chill. You stay in your own energy. You take it. And because at the end of the day, you're doing this conversation out of love because you genuinely care about this person. You genuinely care about what it is that both of you can come together to figure out. So you just stay, and then honestly, hindsight might be 20/20 for them later, and they might just go like, man, like my dad, my mom, my grandma, my friend, they just stayed so calm, and I was just so angry, and that makes me feel so bad because it made me feel bad. But yeah, that's also just my little 2 cents on that one. Sorry.
Max has to turn it on. Yeah.
My question is, or my observation, I apologize, I was somewhere else until 10 minutes ago in another meeting, so I might have missed what I'm going to ask. An observation I've had since January, talking about independence right at the very beginning was all fine and dandy. And then as more people were being exposed to it, I came across people that were getting more frustrated by their question and not getting answers. And so the conclusion I have come up with for myself is we all agree that
Okay, mic's up. We're just going to repeat the question, okay, for the people watching on, okay?
No, just let him finish, Max. We're almost done the question.
So with the 1/3, if I can use that term, the people that we're really trying to target, those that have not committed either way. And it's been commented that Carney is driving that to our group, which is absolutely phenomenal and great for him. But I am not going to ask anybody about independence anymore. I want to start talking to them about the bills that the Liberal government has changed or taking our sovereignty away from me as an individual and my country. And so I think we need to be, you can talk about independence, but I think we really need to be educating people about Canada and really what Canada is doing to us, because that is, I think that is going to persuade them on the question, on the first question. She added 2. If you don't understand that, get with me. But on the first question is, do you want to stay in Canada? They will go back to the conversation and the bills that you talk to them, and they'll start thinking, oh, well, I can't talk about this in my Bible. It's against the law. Or whatever bill that really disturbs them. And I really think that is going to change the vote more so than talking about the independence, because a lot of people that are undecided kind of have their back up already when you bring up independence.
Well, you missed it. My whole speech is about the historic relationship between Ottawa and Alberta, or what has become Alberta. And I started way back in the 1800s with what they did, and I'll work my way up to currently Bill C8 and C9. And I talked about those 2 bills. And yes, you are 100% right. We have to talk about those, because those are what are affecting us. And some of those bills that are even from the 1930s and 40s are still affecting us to this day. So yes, you are 100% right that we have to talk about those bills that are coming forward and how they are affecting our day-to-day lives.
And here's the fun part. If we're going to talk about these things, you have to read the bills. You have to read it, you have to know it, you have to understand it, so when you have the conversations, you're coming from a place of knowledge, right? Or listen to a podcast. However, read it anyway, because even though I might read something and I have a different take on it than someone else will, go back to the primary source if you can and really learn it.
If you don't understand the bill, and this is what I've been doing, I took over the chapter chair in Tabor knowing nothing about politics. I've sat down probably 100 to 150 hours going through AI and reminding it as I question it. I don't want your liberal answer from the media and all of this stuff, because that's where it gets its information. After you correct AI 3 or 4 times, then it brings you to the facts. And if you do that, you can educate yourself on the bill in a term that you can understand it. So I would highly recommend it, but don't believe the first 2 or 3 things it says. And Wilmer will vouch that I have put a lot of information in this, and everybody that receives the email says, wow, I did not know that. So I would encourage you to study it. You read it, you're not going to understand it, but be cautious with AI, because it is liberal. But if you keep reminding it, not be liberal, give me the facts, you will get the right information.
And that's great to do, and I agree with you, but read the original bill yourself. And I would encourage everyone in here, as I said even when I was speaking, go download a copy of the Alberta Act from the Government of Alberta's website and read it, because it will amaze you on all the stuff that we were handicapped from the beginning. And then you can work your way up through to the current bills. But there are bills, like I said, like the Alberta Act that brought Alberta and Saskatchewan, the only 2 provinces, by the way, that were brought into Confederation by acts of legislation rather than by negotiation. And under that, they told us how we were going to operate. And that's spelled out in the Alberta Act. And we've got a lot of rights back that we didn't have under that. But it gives you a historical basis on where all these other laws are coming from. So I would encourage you to use AI, but definitely read the bills.
Point of clarification, Maddie said listen to a podcast of someone reading it if you can't have the time to listen to read it. It was listen then to someone.
I wasn't listening. So quickly on that note, there's a lot of people in Alberta that are upset with a lot of federal legislation. And when you start to ask them, okay, well, What are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix this? One of the things people are likely to say is, oh, we can't because we don't have enough voice. And then you're like, okay, let's have a conversation. What does it tell you that the only reason Alberta was able to even get the Prime Minister to say that we might consider changing some of these things or looking at them in the future, provided you do all these other things first that you don't want to do, maybe we'll do this. To get him to say that, we had to actually make Alberta sovereignty mainstream. That's a pretty big deal, right?
Am I allowed to say something?
Do I get a choice?
I got a little quibble. I just wanted to say, we ran into a gal the other day that is very eager and on board, but she said, Vicky, I don't know how to answer these questions, and I don't feel comfortable talking about it. And I told her, and I want to tell every one of you, you don't have to feel comfortable. You don't have to know your shit. Pardon me. Know where to point them to. Find some references, websites, podcasts, whatever, to direct them to. We don't have to know everything, but we do have to open our mouths.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was testing it. I was going to say also sometimes it's very admirable when you're having a conversation to say that you don't know something, because even my parents, what kind of, I think helped, I was trying to hindsight 2020 why I didn't go through the rebellious phase of I need to, question everything that the older person in front of me is saying. And I think that I came on an aha moment, which was they were gracious enough to say that they don't know, but they want to find out together. And that really resonated as a kid growing up with them, because they were like, we'll just figure it out as we go. And so that's also something when you're having those conversations with those people and you feel uncomfortable, then you can just go like, well, let's both figure it out together. Because it was me and Maddie did a round table with some UCP youth kids, and one of them is not an independence pusher at all, and he's Federalist, and we were just like, well, we read this document, The Value of Freedom PDF on the APP website, and we mailed it to him, and we said, let's go over it together and get your thoughts. And that's basically all you can do, is just put forward what it is that you think you have, what it is that you might not have. And if you're both like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this, like, let's listen to the podcast together and then we'll like exchange notes, then that's a good segue to show that you're both growing together in your knowledge. So
I just want to quibble. Okay. I didn't realize I was a pusher.
I think I got a question that everyone is asking right now online and maybe even in the room. What is that on Chris's shirt?
I think I've been targeted. Oh, so this is it's a CBS or CBC button, pardon me. Yes. Why am I wearing a CBC button? Is it because I'm a Fed? Is it because I'm controlled opposition?
Yes.
No, it's because there's a couple of ladies from the CBC here right now asking questions. And, they've got a board at the back, and the question is, what is it about Alberta independence, or what is it about separatism that other Albertans are getting wrong, right? And
what is the biggest thing the rest of Alberta gets wrong about separatism?
There it is, thanks. So my first comment was, well, the wording of that. We're not separatists. We're not trying to remove ourselves, like separate from something. We're trying to self-determine, right? We're not going anywhere. We're literally connected by dirt all the way around Alberta. And I think it's important to get these words right? Are we trying to leave everybody? No, we're just trying to make our own choices. And in making our own choices, we can also make choices to work together with those around us. So that's why I'm wearing this today, just because I want people to know that, as much issue as many people take with the legacy state-funded media, there are some people who actually want to ask questions and hear from Albertans as to why, why we're pursuing this path.
Something that I wanted to add also, just to ping off of Chris, is I always have questions like of other people's questions just lingering a bit, and I feel like as we keep talking, it just adds more value. And I was thinking that also when it comes to the sentiments around the federalism and like the Canadian identity and what it is that they feel they have towards it, and not wanting to leave Canada because what about the other Canadians and all of that, a part of me is also like, state your intention, and it might not be so opposite from what they're saying. As in, no one's intention is they want the rest of Canada to suffer or be ruined or be wrecked. It's more like we are trying to get our feet off the ground so that way we're in a better position to help, because right now we're not helping ourselves. And then you can use just real life examples for that individual in their own existence, which is like, if you're basically capped at the knees and someone's trying to get you to help them out, sometimes you're not always in a position in that moment to do it. Maybe you're doing something else, maybe you're focused on something else. And so you say, give me a minute, and then I'll come back to you, right? And so that just happens in ordinary, everyday interactions of life, where sometimes you can't always solve it right there and then because you are doing another thing. And so it's the same thing with Alberta. It's like, we can't solve the rest of Canada the way we are right now. We need to do a thing first. Give me a minute, and then I'll come back to you. But yeah. And also, last thing is, since we've been talking about CUC, I need to make a point of clarification. In my last, in our speech, I am not inciting violence for the trolls online, just saying. It's more so just the idea of have it on your brain as a point of preparedness, obviously. But if you check out me and Maddie's channel, you'll see that we've had like Operation Gladio experts on to talk about some of like the more military aspects of what it is that oligarchs and secret intelligence agencies do. And we know, based on just us doing our homework, and you can too, from listening to these people that are way smarter than us, is the fact that they purposely infiltrate movements to get them violent. So if anything, if there's any context that I have on the internet there for you to have, because you might not always have my context being with me in person, is that definitely that's not something that I advocate for. And I'm like, preserve human life as much as possible, because I'm definitely not for the depopulation agenda. I don't care if your ideology doesn't agree with me. It's more so just have that preparedness for yourself. And like I was saying earlier, it's the community essentially that we are building and the friends that we make that is our strongest asset fundamentally when it comes to the reality of when things go bad. And so that's what I'm advocating for, because if anything I have learned from these Operation Gladio things, we were on an interview with Max, Freedom Calendar done, and thank you so much for live streaming. He had us on, and someone was asking about the immigrants that are coming in. They're like, well, what about them causing all these like crimes and the violence? And I'm like, understand that it might not be this sort of Islam that's the problem because of their religious beliefs and they don't value and therefore they're causing crime. I'm like, if we look at historical context and knowledge, again, people that are smarter on me who have talked about this, I referenced Matthew Aird earlier, they could either be paid actors, the people that come in, because during even the time of the Crusades, we call them skin suits, where it's like people that pretend to be something that's virtuous, pretend to be this thing that you agree with, and they're not that. And then they're a paid actor meant to stir the shit, because civil wars are not necessarily just something that I guess it's not at all meant for the people. People get killed in those. It's meant for someone far beyond that orchestrated that. And so even in Alberta, we'll have to be very cautious of that as well. It's who wants and benefits from me believing that it is this certain group. So, yeah.
Here we go.
So I'm Wilmer here. I absolutely appreciate that you guys are up there talking about this stuff, and I appreciate younger girls up there talking to the younger people. I think that's so important moving forward for what we're doing here. I think that's a huge compliment to be given to you guys. And the lack of education has been out there during the petition. I really appreciate that that's happening. I got to say that. One thing that I've learned through some of Ivan's emails that he's talking about, and I don't know if you know Chris, and you're in business. I don't know your buddy up there. I don't know him, but anyway, either way, the whole banking system for Alberta. Ivan has brought forward some very important information about supporting Alberta credit unions and you know the Alberta banks, so to speak, instead of versus the other big fours out there, right? To make the Alberta economy stronger and not so much support all that revenue going, the banking revenue going to Ottawa, because the other four are all probably situated in Ottawa or Ontario, wherever. Just curious on if you've thought about that, Chris, on that whole banking side of things.
That's coincidental that you bring that up, because I've actually been talking about that a little bit, mostly because of what I've learned from my friend Ben Trudeau. So Ben discusses the things that Quebec has done, exactly what you just mentioned, to take back every lever of control and every piece of sovereignty they can that they are due, and they do it there, right? One of the examples is, he uses the example of our royalty payments. So every Friday, the big oil companies, they deposit the royalty in a CIBC bank account in Toronto. And it's like, it's in the billions, I think. It's a huge number, what they deposit. That money, over the weekend, earns that bank like $2 or $3 million or something like that. And that money goes, it stays in Ontario. Why are we doing that? Like, what he explains is the Minister of Energy could literally write a letter and say, close this bank account, open a bank account here in Alberta, Bow Valley, ATB, whatever, and make the deposits there, and that money stays in Alberta. There are a number of things like that we could do in Alberta, and we could do it in weeks, not months and not years. We could do it in weeks. And I really think it's important that we start to talk about those things, because we're talking about the broader implications of self-determination and sovereignty. Even the Premier says that she wants a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. If you want a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, the path that you take is very similar to the path I take. I want to pursue sovereignty while taking control of all of those things which we can right off the bat. If she believes in sovereignty, she also wants to take control of those things. So her and I are aligned on that path. After that, we're going in a little bit of a different direction. But yeah, absolutely, that can be done. It's not rocket science, and it absolutely should be done.
So I sent that email to one oil company, and he said immediately. I sent that email to one oil company guy in Tabor, and he said immediately, his reply was, I'm changing over today. That's how easy that was, because like Ivan did a great job laying it out with AI, and it's very well done. And it was that simple to understand, and it's just dollars and cents. Like, if your calculator doesn't lie, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's the same thing as what I'm discussing, but yeah, there could be things that are just that simple. It's no debate needed. It's just a do or don't. And if the Premier is really serious about Alberta sovereignty, then we should do those things. Desjardins? Yeah, Desjardins.
Can I take some online questions?
One more thing, still speaking on the banking. One thing that Quebec has done is they've set up a credit union, Desjardins Credit
Desjardins.
Union. Say it again, pronounce it. Desjardins. Yes. And 95% of Quebecers bank there?
Something like that.
Yeah, 90 to 95% of all Quebecers bank with them. That money stays in Quebec. If something happens with the Canadian dollar and the bottom falls out of it, they have the assets in their bank that they don't care. We should be doing the same thing here. We should 100% be doing the same thing here. Whether you're for independence or not for independence, that's something that we should be doing to protect the province, is we should have our assets in our province.
Blah, 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 blah. So
MayCee and I were asked very, humbly by the Alberta Women's Independence Network, that's Kathy Flett and Angela Tebeck. They asked us to host an economics panel. And so we had on Fergus Hodgson and Brett Oland, who owns the Bow Valley Credit Union. Me and MayCee and our family, we do banks with the Bow Valley Credit Union. And what you just brought up, Sean, is a very big idea that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, because that to me sounds like a national bank. Provincial at this moment, but it would be a national bank for Alberta. And it's a very good question to be thinking about, because some people, they look at Canada and think, oh, we're communist, and therefore we have to go every step of the way against communism, which means capitalism, free market. And a national bank isn't technically, because a national bank has been run by both fascists in the past and communists. That's why banking, it's a tool, and it depends on the mind that's using it. But a national bank is a fantastic idea in order to put Alberta's money in Alberta. And people, I would recommend, because even I, as me and MayCee did that interview, people are very nervous about ideas like a national bank, because they're really trying to avoid any idea of communism. And they associate a national bank because they think it's centralized, that we shouldn't do it, because it's all in one place. Meanwhile, so this is the question that I think me and MayCee were trying to get Brett and Fergus to think about, but they wanted to avoid any centralization. But avoiding all centralization financially gives you perestroika in Chile and Gorbachev, what happened there. In order to fix communism in the Soviet Union and in Chile, what they did is they tried to encourage all capitalist-like policies. And so they were like, each individual gets to do investment. But that radically decimated the economy immediately. But it happened to benefit some of the upper people at the top who had all of the banks, because that's when you also get corporations that can take over. Then you get the private-public partnerships. So either way, when you look at banking and economics, neither work. You got to find somewhere in the middle, and that makes people very uncomfortable when they're trying to avoid like a communist Canada, because a national bank sounds centralized to them. But I would recommend looking into Hamiltonian economics. That's who did it, and that's the American economy, American system of political economy that was coined by Henry C. Carey. But when you look at the way those implemented, that got them out of poverty in times of war as well. And even though we're not in a physical war, there is economic warfare that's going on in Alberta. You can even look at some of the policies and the money laundering that the government of Alberta does. They'll say it's for this policy, but then you dig into it and it's actually not going to where they say it was. And that happens all the time. So good question. And even me and MayCee, everybody should look into that, because money is something that we operate with on a daily basis. And it's very important that we negotiate the nuance and not repeat things that have already been done in order to avoid a greater evil.
My last two bits on that would be when I was reading an article that Matthew did, and again, he's just a proponent that we love to follow because he puts his hat in literally everything, but it was one on the idea of Keynesian economics versus von Hayek. And as I was reading it, it's pretty easy to kind of go like how Keynesian economics is not necessarily the best way to go. Most people would describe it as more of a liberal type of economic system anyway. So some people are in this particular movement, it would take no problem for them to probably go like, Keynes is stupid and here's why. But it was Hayek that actually is I guess, more designated as the proponent of right-leaning policies on economic scales. And I was reading the article, and the thing with just pure free market forces is that it kind of takes away from the idea of protective tariffs, for example, because if you have free market, then you have free trade, and what that looks like is the cheap labor that we have coming in here today, and people profit off of no longer having to rely on your domestic right, infrastructure and manufacturing, but now they just have basically the cheap labor that comes in here, and without protective measures, which again would require some form of governmental structure. So it's one of those things where we have to ask ourselves the question, under what mode of attention is this, can we make this a little bit better? Because there is such a thing as revenue tariffs, and those are not a good thing. And then there's protective tariffs, which can be a good thing. And that's what the American system did during their time of trying to, because during the time of the War on Independence, like America was pretty much broke and they were not doing so hot, but in a very short amount of time they were able to raise themselves up quite exponentially. And so if you check out Matthew Errett's work, we did our podcast, or I guess live stream, with those economics panels. That's where we started to research some of the system of American political economy, and we started to go, well, why can't we do this? So yeah.
We have a commenter online wondering how come the CWB was bought up by National Bank. Anybody want to comment on that?
The National Bank. I used to have my student loan with them. The National
that's what they were
Bank,
looking for.
which is based in Quebec. And the National Bank, by the way, was founded in Quebec City. And they grew up. This is the largest federal chartered bank in Quebec. Is Desjardins' biggest competitor, aside from the Bank of Montreal, which is not in Montreal, but it's in Toronto. And they purchased the Canadian Western Bank for peanuts, basically. Just a thought.
Go ahead.
During your speech, the Holmes girls talked about not being worried about different factions within our organization, right? That worries me, because they're not gonna come at us with multiple factions. Those guys have got an organization and they're ready to go. I don't think we're ready to go. That's my personal take.
So the question would be, are we ready to go?
What I'm getting at is when you're fractured, and we are fractured, you think we're pulling together, and we are all going to try individually to pull together, but I still think you need an umbrella.
See, I 100% disagree with you. Actually, I probably 1,000% disagree with you. That's a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's how much I disagree. The reason that I disagree with you, I am. I'm not upset about it. The reason that I disagree with you is that because of the way they're coming at us, if you centralize under one umbrella and they take down that centralized umbrella, the whole thing collapses. Whereas the way we are going at it now, we're not working against each other. We're all working towards the same goal, and we're actually, several of us are involved in several of the groups. But with them not being all under one umbrella, they can't get rid of us. And we can't be taken down. They can take down one branch of it. We're acting like a hydra. You cut off one head, another one that takes its place. And by doing it that way, we can't, it's whack-a-mole to the ultimate scale, and we can't be taken down. But we're all working together. We don't hate each other. We're all working to the same end goal. But I actually think we need twice or three times what we've already got to make sure that we get to that goal in the end.
Yeah, and Keith Wilson actually suggested, why don't we have a group of farmers who just come together and they start Farmers for Independence? Or a group of grandmas, grandmas for independence, whatever, this group for independence. And it doesn't have to be a big group, but there's a couple benefits to that. The Hydra type idea, but I think a Hydra is kind of a bad thing, but I get it.
The Hydra is...
There's that component of it, but once we get into an actual campaign phase, well, now there's rules on fundraising, how much money you can spend in advertising. If you have 100 groups and they all have that ability to do those things, well, you've got 100 times the ability to get the message out, specifically to groups that are more aligned with what you're talking about. right? So there's a very, very big opportunity there, and I don't think it's detrimental to do so. I think what you're referring to is more some of the how would I say it? The more unpleasant aspects of personalities, right? And I get it. So recently, I've talked about some things that have happened, and I sat on this for quite a while. And while I don't want people to be not motivated or pursue this amazing opportunity we have, at the same time, if I see something that I believe is wrong and going to derail or take us off track, I have to speak up. If I don't do it, I'm not going to sleep at night. And I do believe there's a way to overcome certain issues without being too disruptive, but sometimes there's a little bit of disruption needed, and you got to get it over with. Like Jordan Peterson says, telling the truth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary. And once you do, and you get it out in the open, you can deal with it and move on, instead of having this nagging, festering thing going on, slowing everything down. You just get it over with, move on, and that's all we can do.
He brought up Farmers for Independence. That actually would be an awesome group to start, because there are things going on from Ottawa, as you were saying, bills and the like coming down. Bill C-22 that just came through is under the guise of animal protection, but it gives even more ungodly rights to the SPCA. They have 3 times the police powers that the police have to come onto your property. That's something that farmers should be screaming about. Just the fertilization, the fertilizer acts that they brought in, all of this stuff. And that's something that the people in the city really don't understand, and so there wouldn't be much point in discussing it. But Farmers for Freedoms would be one heck of a group to get started, because there is a lot to discuss in agriculture that Ottawa is doing.
The CFIA is taking over small farms by the thousands right now, just because they're going in and giving them all these different regulations on how to raise and control their animals, and if you don't follow those bylaws, you are going to lose your livestock, and they will come in and they will do it for you. We've seen that happen a number of times.
Dale, it's for your safety.
Oh, yes.
This isn't just a Canada or Alberta thing either, folks. A lot of these policies that we're seeing that we disagree with, they're not even written in Canada. They're written somewhere else, and our politicians go and they have these big weekends and talk about how they're going to save the world, and then they bring these policies back to Canada and impose them. It's not stuff that we asked for, and it just comes here. I went to Holland a few years ago because I saw that the Dutch farmers were protesting some things their government was doing. And I caught wind that there had been like 3,000 farms that had been wiped off the face of the Netherlands because the government was implementing these policies that was just forcing people right off their farms. And then they were literally wilding the area, turning it back to nature for biodiversity to save the planet. So I went and I had a talk with some of these farmers. My friend Jasper, he's from Holland. I stayed with him when I was over there, and we traveled around and we talked to a whole bunch of farmers that were dealing with these things. And at that time, I said, you know what, Jasper, I've noticed that Europe is usually like 2, 3, maybe 4 years ahead of Canada. We see things going on there and we're like, oh man, that's so crazy. Thank goodness we're not in Europe. And then lo and behold, a couple years later, we're facing the same policies. So these policies that we're facing right now, some of the ones Shane mentioned, are things that were implemented in Europe a few years ago and have caused disastrous consequences. And now here we are doing it. So, you don't even need a crystal ball to see what's coming. You can just look around the world, specifically to Europe, and you can decide, hey, do I want to get involved now while I have the opportunity to do it? Or am I going to wait until we're like, for instance, until we're like England, where if you post something offensive or pray in public, you're going to get arrested and fined. Yeah, I mean, it's our choice. We do it now while we can, or we just, instead we go watch a hockey game or go on vacation or whatever and let things get so much worse to the point where maybe we can't do anything about it in the future. Yeah, Ostrich Farm is a prime example. We let policy get to the point where something as disgusting as what happened at that ostrich farm could happen. You know, and what was the demand? Test the animals. If they're sick, we'll kill them. Nope, we're going to fine you if you do that. That's where we're at. And we could have fixed this years ago, but we were all too collectively busy either working to feed our families or enjoying our leisure time and not being involved in civics like we should. So now I think we should do it now.
I just have my 2 bits. Sorry. For the, I guess, overarching question of the groups and whether or not we have a central leader and all that, and even speaking about the different personalities, I think that's why I was kind of highlighting the going back to the painting out your worst case scenario, because how I was more so describing it is when there's someone that has, like, let's say OCD, for example, and they have something that they're really afraid of, doorknobs. This is an actual case. And they just are deathly afraid because of the germs, for example, right? Some people say exposure therapy. So just approach the door. Don't even necessarily put your hand on the door handle yet, right? But the worst case scenario, sometimes when you play it out, it's like, I'm afraid that if I leave my stove on, it's going to burn my entire house down. Okay, so your house gets burnt down. Then what? Life still goes on. You still have to make decisions. You still have to pivot. You still need to figure things out. Maybe you have family that you'll have to live with, and now you have to re-strategize some things. You have to think it through at the end, if the worst case scenario gets played out. And so for some people that are like, oh, we should take Danielle out, we should keep Danielle in, we already know that a politician's not going to be the thing that saves us. But when it comes to playing out the scenario, okay, so some people decide that it's their conviction to kick Danielle out because of their own reasons, research, whatever. So now they're campaigning to go towards doing that thing. And then that gives us some trepidation because we're like, we might be eating ourselves alive, giving, you know, our NDP opponents, you know, more leverage because now we're kicking out a leader that was probably maybe doing us a favor. We're not entirely sure because we're not in the room and in her head making the decisions. We're interpreting it. That's the best we can do. And so they decide that they put their energy towards doing that. Now, do they have a person that they have in mind that they're going to put in after her? Okay, do they have a timeline of how long that's going to take to probably try and get another person in? Okay, they need to play out all that timeline, okay? We might eat ourselves alive in that process. Okay, now play out the scenario where we feel like our can got kicked a little bit down. We get to answer a question on a question, yay. And even though we already answered it by signing the petition and we just wanted our vote, right? So now we're playing out this scenario, and for all we know, court cases, injunctions, how far it gets kicked down the line, things still keep getting implemented. Right now, our Alberta military just got increased because of Arctic defense. Was it really because of Arctic defense? Right? So then that's got to be a bit of the question of some things are coming in the back door regardless of Danielle being in here or not. So that's also the stuff that we need to be paying attention to, is what's on the ground happening that's coming out of Ottawa, that regardless of who our premier is or where people feel convicted to spend their energy, something's happening and we need to be aware of that. And then if worst case, sometimes my dad, he'll just be sitting in our CA meeting and he'll just be like, oh my gosh, like let the NDP in already, because sometimes it's looking at that going like, well, now people, do you see it? Do you finally see it now? And we already knew it was coming this whole time, right? And that's why we're trying to do our preventative warfare, and we're trying to make sure that we take the proper steps to prevent it. But I'm just trying to highlight, do what it is that you're convicted to do, have more conversations. If there's conversations happening between the personalities and not just at each other, that's probably the best thing to be happening, in my opinion. And then if it doesn't span out the way that we hope, are we thinking about that?
Yeah.
Ticks.
Ticks.
That's what's happening. Ticks.
Ticks.
Owl syndrome.
2 more questions.
I have some online questions, though. Question number 1. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. Question number one is, what's your strategy to get into the cities, specifically because the information warfare is pretty much complete, or a lot of people in the rural areas are mostly in favor for independence, but it seems that the cities is another next target, so we need to get in. What is your strategy or thoughts or strategies that you can, on top of your head, to get them?
We are going into the cities, but we're not treating them as a city. We are treating them as the individual communities that they are. So we have meetings coming up in Calgary and Edmonton, but we're doing it in Rundle Park. We're doing it in Forest Lawn. We're doing it in the communities within them, and we're working on building up volunteers in each one of those communities so that we can go in there. And we may not necessarily have a town hall per se in those communities. We may have a wiener roast in the park and have a chat. I mean, one of the best meetings that we had was a wiener roast in Rundle Park in Edmonton. We didn't have everybody speaking at the front, and we all just sat around and we answered the questions from the people there. And that worked very well. And that is what we are planning on doing. And and the advertising, we're doing, targeting the city with advertising as well. The cities are our main focus for us. And in fact, starting September 1st, we're not doing any more small town ones. We're concentrating strictly on the city. Two reasons. One, we need to make sure that the cities are hit, but also, face it, it's harvest season. What's the point in going out into the countryside during harvest season? So it's the perfect time to do it. But even between now and then, we are working on the cities.
And also another question as well. What is going to be the next time you're going to Calgary?
Next week, isn't it? Yeah, next week week after. Drumheller next week. It's the week after that we're in Calgary the week after next.
Okay.
Does Calgary really need you?
We're working on it.
Maddie, get off the cord. Calgary really needs you, Vicky.
Calgary for the win, guys.
Okay, a super chat from Rage Against a Machine. Man, I love that.
Rage Against the Machine. Hello.
Yep. So he says, freedom has never been preserved by comfort, nor secured by silence. It has been won in struggle, sacrifice, and defended by men who understood that the price of surrender is often paid by their children. That's some wise words. Yeah. There's, I've heard often that, people fought in world wars, and they fought and they died for your freedom so that you didn't have to fight. And I heard that for years, and now I'm like, wait a minute, that's not why they did that. They fought for freedom so that we would have the opportunity to keep it, right? So what Rage Against the Machine said is that's very accurate.
June 16th.
Oh, June 16th, we're in Calgary. Okay, one more question, and then I think we got to wrap it up. Unless it's a really pressing question.
I'm good here. No, there's a mute button, guys.
Okay, I sort of asked a similar one. July 1st, do you think Danielle Smith could go and have sovereignty, since she talks about that so much, so set up a sovereign account for Alberta so we can start collecting federal taxes here? And since she can show that that's what she wants to do, so let's get the heck at it if she wants to do it, instead of just talking.
So are you asking if July 1st, Danielle Smith could set up tax collection in Alberta? I don't think it would be that quick. However, this is one of the things that was outlined in the firewall letter. and it's something we should be doing. If you want a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, step one, he who has the money rules. He who has the gold rules. It's a golden rule, right? If we're not going to collect our own taxes, like, why bother with anything else? You can't stand up for yourself if the purse strings are held by the person that you're in conflict with, and they can just withhold transfers, which happens. I was very disappointed when I heard Danielle say that they had looked at an Alberta Revenue Agency and it didn't seem like there was too much of an appetite for it. I was like, pardon me? No, hold on a second. You said sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. So the tax collection is a must. This is one of the areas where we need to put pressure and make sure that our politicians understand these things. And the way we put the pressure is by continuing to build the movement so big that the politicians have to get in front of it. All right, one more question, but then that's it. You need the microphone.
I researched this really in depth. It would literally take 2 weeks. All we have to do is send a message to all businesses, email, switch your federal tax ID number to the Alberta number, and make your payment on this number, and that automatically goes into ATB. That's all it would take. We already have a system set up for taxes, our Alberta taxes, and all they have to do is just add on federal taxes. It's a very simple switch.
Well, that would be great, and that's something we need to be talking about.
Anyone else? One last chance?
No. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for coming and for everybody for watching online. I believe that all the tables and chairs need to be put away, so if you could help do that before you leave, that would be greatly appreciated. It makes the cleanup go a lot quicker. Other than that, to those that are online, if you haven't already got your tickets for tomorrow night's event in Lacombe, I would encourage you to do so. It's going to be a good time, and it's just going to be a nice, relaxing time. Here comes Patty. She wants to say something more.
For those online or anybody else, if you're having trouble making the credit card work or can't find it, just email Let's Talk Alberta and we'll put you on the list and just come pay at the door. I want to thank you all for coming and just be encouraged. I said the other day that if you see an Alberta flag in somebody's yard, they're your people. So let's put flags up everywhere. I had a guy the other day said, I bought a flag because you said that. So let's put flags up on your fence, on your deck, on your, let's make this province blue.
There we go.
Let's talk Alberta at gmail.com.
Oh, let's talk Alberta at gmail.com. And then if you want to go farther into the season, July 1st, at the Whistle Stop is Albertans Day. Last year we had a really fun event, and it's going to be bigger this year.
So thank you very much for those online for tuning in. Thanks for the super chats, and we'll see you tomorrow then. Have a good one.